long-awaited part 2 of my job hunt series is probably going to be of most benefit to people who are shortly going to be entering the academic job market or who are new graduates already in the job market. I'm going to talk about how I prepared for my academic interviews, the type of questions that arose, and also what the outcome of these interviews was. So, first up, how I prepared. The first thing I did, which is the most obvious thing that everyone will tell you to do, is to do your research. So find out everything you can about the university, the subjects that they offer, the type of students they attract, and the staff members in the department. The best thing that I did was actually speak to ex-students, because there's a lot of information which is not going to be available on a university website. I was able to have a look at some course outlines, find out a little bit about the kind of typical student that the university attracts, and find out the way that courses are structured, which is not kind of information that is always necessarily available online. The other key preparation strategy that I did was book a meeting with a careers advisor at my university and have a practice academic interview. This is obviously not something that every university will offer, but my university offers it for PhD students. I had a 1-hour session with a careers consultant. I was able to do my presentation for her and then have a 20-minute interview where she grilled me not only about my presentation but also about the questions that come up in any academic interview. This was one of the best things I did for my confidence levels. It really helped me feel like I knew what I was doing and have a bit more of a sense as to what I should expect, because it was my first academic interview, and indeed the first interview that I've done for quite a long time, because I haven't done any interviews for several years since I've been doing my PhD. Obviously, it's nothing like the real thing. You're just speaking to one person rather than a panel, and you do know that it's a kind of constructed environment and that what's happening is not the real thing. Even so, I found it enormously beneficial just to get a sense of being put on the spot and having to answer questions and think on your feet. She also gave me a really good handout which is just filled with multiple example questions that often get asked in academic interviews. So, for example, why do you want to work here? Can you describe the value of your work to a layperson? That's a really good interview question. What's your research plan for the next 3 years? How does your research fit in with the department? What are your plans for publishing? Things like that. So it was really good to just read through these questions. I was never going to prepare answers to all these questions. I think it comes across quite artificial if you prepare answers for an interview and then you try and fit your answer into whatever question you're asked, like a square peg into a round hole. But even so, just to make sure that I was thinking through the right types of things was important to me. The other thing that I did was ask my supervisor to read my presentation. So for both interviews I had to do a practice presentation. For the longer term job, which was a 2-year job, I had to do a 20-minute presentation, and for the short term job, which was just 2 subjects for 1 term, that was only a 5-minute presentation. For the 20-minute presentation, I asked my supervisor to read it and give me some feedback, and that was also very helpful. Interestingly, the feedback that I got for my second presentation, which is the one that I didn't give to my supervisor to read, was about the balance that I struck, and they suggested that perhaps it might have been more effective if I spent less time talking about the case study and more time talking about the kind of generic concept that they asked me to present about, and perhaps demonstrating the ways in which I would teach that concept rather than the knowledge that I would draw upon in order to explain that concept. That definitely shows the value of getting an expert in your field to read your work, whether it's a supervisor, a friend, or a colleague. And obviously that friend would have to be in academia if they're going to be an expert in your field. When it came to the actual interviews themselves, the types of questions varied between the 2 interviews. The first interview that I had, the questions were not so much the type of questions that were on this handout that I was given by the careers service, but were more specific to the university. Specific questions about the courses that they offer and how my research fitted into that course, the requirements of the incoming students that I would be personal tutor for, things like that. The second interview I had, however, was much more kind of generic questions about how I would approach dealing with a student who came to see me about a personal matter out of class, things like that, which were much more applicable to a whole range of different institutions. Finally, you've watched till this point, you deserve to know the outcome. Well, I'm very pleased to tell you that I was offered the job that I had the interview in person for, and I am joining Bristol University as a teaching fellow there for the next 2 years, which I'm very happy about. I will continue to make videos about my research and my teaching there, and also the final leg of the PhD as I approach the Viva in the next coming weeks. So do, if you're not already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the next part of my journey. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and bye for now.